Alright guys, HyDra again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Some fascinating words last night emerging from OpTic's coach JP, suggesting there certainly are some regrets with the way that they handled the Kenny situation this season. The fact that they were not able to replicate their success last year with this new team because they didn't adapt in quite the right way to help Kenny feel super comfortable with the way that things were. This has raised some serious questions. Either Kenny should have adapted himself, or where actually did the problems lie within the team? Because Kenny has now gone elsewhere to the Minnesota Rocket, looks much better. OpTic themselves, they seem revitalized to some degree too, with a good 2-0 weekend. Exactly what's happened there behind the scenes, this in some respects raises some more questions than it even answers. But very much interested in your thoughts on the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I greatly appreciate it. Just quickly, we're going to start with the Vegas Falcons. They did a statement yesterday, and it was kind of an interesting time to drop a statement because over the last few days, they've made the big decision that they're going to effectively get rid of the Saudi project in the Pro League for now, and they're going to, well, I don't think they're ever going to go back to it precisely in the Pro League. What they are going to do, however, is continue to support Saudi and what they describe as MENA, which is Middle East and North Africa. The region there, they will continue to support. So this is the full statement in the English. You know, if you want to read the Arabic, then, you know, here it is in its full glory. But that's not going to be very helpful to many of you. So this is what they have to say. I'm not going to, like, read through the entire thing. But they've effectively tried to respond to some of the criticism, I imagine, from some of their own fans. Because, you know, there is a big contingent of fans out in Saudi Arabia that want to support this team in the Saudi project, and fans from that region in general. They've not, like, gone away from it entirely. Xnid is still there, and I hope will remain there for a long time to come. I think he's a promising player. You know, he's definitely talented enough to be in the CDL. I do wonder whether if they move on from him entirely, like, let's say Falcons drop the mega bag, they try and get HyDra or Simp or Shotzzy or something like this. You know, does he stay? Xnid? Maybe not. And even if he doesn't, does he get an opportunity somewhere else in the league? I'd like to think so, but I think for now he'll stay around. I know that many people are hoping that Kicks might come back at some point as well. So, look, they obviously were getting criticised maybe because it looked like they're moving away from the Saudi thing. They wanted to address it to some extent and say, yes, we are still investing in that region to such an extent that, as they say, they continue to support a majority Saudi academy team and a second academy roster with key Saudi players working to prove themselves every day. So the point is, they're not giving up on the Saudi thing. They're making it very clear that they are not. And the intention will always probably be to have at least a Saudi player in their pro team at any one time. Maybe it's a bit different to other esports, because in Counter-Strike, like, I don't really follow CS as closely as I used to. I don't imagine that there's an especially significant contingent of Saudi Arabian players when compared to the rest of the world. So if Falcons want to win in that game, they, well, as they have done, sign Nastie, Nico, etc, etc. Whereas in COD, it is, you know, pretty big in Saudi Arabia and in that region, so maybe it is possible to form a winning team with a Saudi player on it. That certainly seems to be Falcons' plan. Does that limit their chances? Because if what they're saying here is kind of true, the implication is that they're always going to have that Saudi component within the organization. And, you know, if that's true, does it limit the chances? Does it mean that Pred and Xnid are not exactly going away as a sub-duo in the future, which maybe is fine? Just the AR combination is a bit of a question mark as it presently stands. Speaking of rosters, to follow up on yesterday, we were talking about the rumours around Cloud9 and whether they had trials Capstone instead of Attach and exactly what that looked like. So we talked about it on the show last night, and Don decided that he would, you know, just send Cap a quick message on the show, and Cap got back to him and said, yeah, like, this is true. So Capstone was in a scrim, I think, with them the other day. Presumably he felt like he did pretty well. The team obviously did not move in that direction for now. So yeah, we talked about it in some depth yesterday. We just wanted to kind of follow up and say that as far as we understand, like straight from the man himself, like, yeah, this is a real thing. Cloud9 did try this, and if they tried it, then, you know, it's interesting as to why they didn't follow through with it. Maybe they still could or still will. We went into some detail yesterday on the difficulty of their schedule upcoming. And right now, Cloud9, they're not in a great spot from a couple of different perspectives. So might be something to keep in mind, especially because the teams around them have made moves. Miami have made a move for Super. That may well improve them. It seems to have done so. Like, Super played really well in their series against Falcons the other day. Yeah, they still had to win in 5. It wasn't pretty. They had to Neslo the Falcons. But still, it seems like that Super change may work out. I think certainly the Rocket change with Kenny that seems to be an excellent development as well for them. Here's Kenny. I thought it was pretty funny. So obviously Monday is typically the day off for the boys, and Ken decided that he was going to take the boys bowling, and he rocks up with his own bag and his own bowling ball, and when that happens, like, you know that it's chalked. And obviously Kenny rocked up and decided to smoke these guys, right? But you know that this team, the vibes seem to be improved. It seems like the boys are really looking to Kenny for, advice and help and inspiration to get better at COD, looking, the way of the veteran. That was obviously what we showed here in the intro, was this image from a couple of days ago when Kenny was calling the shots, and all the boys are looking over at him, which I thought was just kind of a cool moment, really, in terms of where they are as a team and where they might potentially go. Look, they've played one weekends, they've gone to 2 Game 5 round 11s, and they were both absolute rulers, and they won one, they lost one. They lost to OpTic, they beat Boston. Both of those teams, though, pretty solid teams, Boston and OpTic, right? So middle of the pack teams right now. OpTic, moving upwards, I would say, in terms of the trajectory. Boston are always going to be, to me, with the current team in that kind of, 6th, 7th kind of range. If you beat them, you're probably good. If you lose to them, you're probably struggling to make the World Championship. That's where I see it for now. And Kenny and Estriel, or Kenny and Ofo had a bit of a back and forth here, right? Because apparently Estriel was talking all sorts of trash the whole week, and then Kenny turned up and decided to shut it down. But Kenny seems much more at home. It seems like he's really enjoyed himself again, which is great to see. The frustrating thing for many OpTic fans will be, like, why couldn't this have happened on OpTic this season? I think Kenny had to go from OpTic, right? I mean, there's no doubt about that Kenny was struggling, and to such a degree that they had to make the change. I was pretty unwilling to come to that conclusion initially, but eventually it was inevitable. Now, did it have to come to that conclusion? Well, that is a matter for debate, and I still feel, as I said at the time, that in the long run, this is a loss for OpTic. I mean, like, Kenny, the way that he's won in the past, what he's done for them recently, it had to be done. Like, I do admit that it had to be done, but Kenny is a very valuable player, was very valuable to OpTic, and it was my opinion for the entirety of this period that it wouldn't say OpTic would exactly regret getting rid of Kenny if they did, because, as I say, it needed to happen, but at some point in the future, there will be an element of, damn, well, if Kenny was here, maybe this would have happened, or this would have happened, or whatever. But they made the move, and JP does admit here that there is some level of regret in terms of the way that things were handled this year. People are maybe comparing this season to like MW2 from a couple of years ago when Scump retired, the team was in shambles, Dashy of course was out of there as well, and then he was back in, and then Ghosty came in, and Huke was there, but they really wanted Pred, and it was a bit of a mess. They scrambled together a couple of grand finals appearances but never won anything. Maybe OpTic could try and do the same thing this year with the team that they have now put together, but it's probably not, the optimal team to take OpTic back to winning championships, but, who knows? Time will tell on that. JP, though, says he has, regrets in terms of the way that they handled the Kenny thing. My biggest regret is that we couldn't play fundamentally the right way to cater to him. So let me share what JP says, then we'll talk about what exactly this even means.
Just curious on your thoughts about Kenny's performance of the weekend. I actually think he played really well. I'm glad for him. I'm still pretty cool with Ken. I just it's unfortunate that like everything happened the way it did. My biggest regret is that we couldn't play fundamentally the right way to kind of cater to him sometimes. That's one of my bigger regrets, and obviously it kills me that our champs team couldn't work again in this game. I always like thought he was a good player. It's just like he was just in very bad situations. He wasn't comfortable, and I don't think the way we were playing helped him at all either.
Now, JP's made it very clear that he's a big fan of Kenny. I think, he's made the point before that himself and Kenny, and maybe even Karma, think about the game, see the game in a similar way. JP actually said this when Kenny was released, and we thought maybe Kenny would sit the season out, but JP said, a selfless leader who's willing to do anything necessary for the win, the smartest player that I've gotten to work with, rooting for him to come back stronger from this much needed break. Now, there's obviously big statements here from JP. The smartest player that he's got to work with is a big statement given JP's history. I mean, he was, working for New York when they had Kremp and Clay. He was on OpTic briefly when Scump was there a couple of seasons ago. So, big words from JP. We know that those guys, got along seemingly quite well and understood the same things about the game. So when he's talking about, we couldn't adapt to the way that Kenny wanted to do things, it's very interesting exactly what he means here, right? Because people will say, oh, well, it was Kenny's system. And obviously it wasn't working and Kenny wasn't working in the system. But it doesn't seem like that's the case. Clearly, well, at least my read on it would be that the game was not being played by OpTic the way that Kenny wanted it to be played. That maybe was the case with Huke as well, and maybe JP agreed. But maybe there was a feeling that they can't really change it because that's the nature of the game and the way that they're currently playing things. And I think this is why this stint of Kenny on Rocker is now so fascinating, right? Because Kenny's gone over there to the Rocker, they've got the talent around him, and, you know, he is effectively there to implement his system in exactly the way that he wants to play the game. And if it works out for him and for the team, then it's obviously going to say something, right? In terms of where they were with OpTic when Kenny was really struggling. But the implication from JP is that they weren't really playing the game in the way that Kenny wanted. And presumably Kenny felt like, well, if we play like this, there's no way we're going to win. And even if he's dropping and obviously that wasn't helping him individually. Kenny to me is really a player who he thrives on having confidence in his teammates making the correct plays. I think that's always been the case for Ken. If he is not sure that his teammates are going to do what he thinks they should do, then he gets in his own head. You know, there's a bit of micromanagement, and I don't think it ever works out for the best. So, you know, Kenny can not always be the easiest player to work with, I think, from this regard. You know, Kenny has a very strict idea of the way that he wants the game to be played, and if that isn't happening, things can go wrong. And not to say that Kenny's necessarily always right, and people would also argue, well, maybe Kenny should have adapted better to the situation. That could also be argued. But you also can't really deny that Kenny knows what he's talking about a lot of the time. And early indications on Rocker would suggest that he probably knows what he's doing over there as well. So therefore, people are raising questions as like, okay, well, whose fault really is it, right? Obviously, Pred's gone to Falcons. They're not looking so good. People are going to talk about Pred in this OpTic situation. Like, there was clearly more than one issue in that camp. But there were loads of replies to this tweet, I don't know if you guys think this is fair or not, that were just roasting Shotzzy, basically. And we've got people saying TikToksy, people saying that, you know, the coach said it, Ken wasn't the issue, Shotzzy is not him, he's been riding that superstar season to a massive contract, Shotzzy is one of the biggest issues, but he's the golden child, like, you know, Shotzzy don't know what he's doing, right? And look, obviously Kenny's individual performance wasn't acceptable, people are talking about Shotzzy and, like, that he doesn't know how to play the game and all this. So, you know, it's interesting. I'm kind of surprised that the comments turned in this direction, because I think that OpTic's commitment to Shotzzy is, you know, very, very much understandable. But I also can understand the perspective, especially when the coach is kind of suggesting that, yeah, well, you know, we were playing the game in this way, Kenny probably wanted it to happen this way, and JP says that's a regret, which obviously implies that maybe had they done it a different way, the results could have been better and they might have made it work with the team that won the World Championship last year again. That never happened. It wasn't close to happening, frankly, in December or when Pred eventually came back into the team. So very much intrigued to your perspective on all this stuff in the comment section below. Just to close out with, we put together a tier list last night. This, just to be clear, is our expected placings going into the major. So like after the qualifiers, where the teams will be. So this isn't like exactly how good they are right now at this present moment. It's about where they will be. So some people were saying that we were overrating OpTic here, putting them too high after just 2 wins on the weekends. And I understand that, but I think that OpTic, you know, they should be in that kind of like 5th kind of place range as it stands. Personally, I'm putting Thieves up there with FaZe. I know that obviously Thieves haven't won like FaZe have won, but in terms of quality of COD in a LAN environment or online, whatever you want to say, you know, to me they are right up there. Surge are a little level behind. Kind of difficult to say between Surge and Toronto. Boston and Rocker, I think you can probably swap those. Ravens, I think, are in a good spot right now. Cloud9 could definitely be higher, but our kind of hot take here was that Cloud9, after losing to OpTic in the way that I did, and rumours of the internal stuff with Attach and Capsule and some of that issue, you know, may cause them to not play as well as they may want to, and they've got a difficult stage ahead. And then you've got the other teams. You can filter those in, you know, whatever way you like, but it is notable, I'd say, that these 4 teams have got at the bottom are the 4 teams that right now are not looking in good shape for the World Championship. So very much interested to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.